Hello, this is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan. Spotify, Spreaker, or iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan. Alright, we got some good stuff today. First, of course, I have to explain a problem that occurred yesterday and Tuesday. Pretty much you guys are going to be getting the Monday podcast today instead of on Monday like you should have. But, I pretty much just checked Spreaker as I, right before I did this, and I saw that the Monday podcast didn't upload yet. And Tuesday's podcast, isn't even there. So, I mean, if I could give you maybe a general review of what my Tuesday's podcast was like. I pretty much just talked about it was my main talking points, the Jets, Aaron Rodgers. Obviously there was more stuff on the Brandon Ayuk thing. I have more reports on that today. Today's report is a lot different than yesterday's. Yesterday's there was a report that a deal was in the works, and now today it doesn't look that way. So that's pretty much what I talked about yesterday. I'm going to open up this show by talking about the Jets, because that's kind of all I can do right now, I guess. Anyway, Rodgers went on a podcast. He said, you don't want to be too excited to win just a few games in New York. As you guys know, if Rodgers is upright and stays healthy, I think New York is the best team in the AFC East. I think they are a team that could maybe win a playoff game. I don't see them going any further than the second round. But, I see them being a formidable team if Rodgers stays healthy. If not, they're probably going to be back to that 7-win range as opposed to the maybe 10-win range that they'd be in with Aaron Rodgers. But, there's no reason to settle for a few wins in New York when, like I said, they have a good roster. And they can only blame Robert Saleh for so long before they fire him. So there's a lot going on with the Jets, which is the only thing possibly holding me back if Rodgers stays healthy. Just all the noise around them, because when you have a coach in the hot seat, like the best teams in the league, the teams that I think are going to the Super Bowl this year, their coach is not in the hot seat, and he's not going anywhere for a while. Andy Reid, the only question is he might retire in a few years. That's it. He's not getting fired. His job is secure. Kyle Shanahan's job is secure. Zach Taylor is secure. Sean McVay is secure if you want to count the Rams as one of the top teams. John Harbaugh, he's secure. All these top teams in the league, Dan Campbell for now isn't going anywhere, which is awesome for my podcast. And then there's the Jets, who I think do have top-end talent, but their coach being on the hot seat is kind of bringing them down a bit. It's that and the fact that their quarterback is 40 years old, and he is slightly declining over the past few years. The ceiling for the Jets is much higher than just winning a few games, and you don't want to be focused on... Obviously, as a team, you don't want to be focused on the floor. You want to be focused on your ceiling and possibly raising it higher than, analysts say. The Jets, they're definitely going to be the most interesting team for me this year. All right, another interesting team, the Niners. They haven't dealt Ayuk yet due to the fact that they are apparently not far apart on a long-term deal. This does scare me a little bit. Listen, the Niners, I said I don't think they need Ayuk to win. And contract negotiations scare me with a lot of teams in the offseason. It's scaring me with Dallas right now. And the Niners, if any Cowboys fans listening to this, the Niners are no different. I'm scared with them for if they're going to pay... I don't think they should be paying Ayuk as much as it seems they are. I don't think Ayuk is worth a long-term deal when you still got to pay McCaffrey. I think Brock Purdy would take a team-friendly deal, that's just a guess, but you also have Trent Williams to pay, who's a lot more valuable than Ayuk. You have other guys that are going to be more valuable than him. If you're going to let anyone walk, it should be Ayuk. He's not as vital to your team. It's Trent Williams, CMC, George Kittle, any other guy, Nick Bosa, any other guy you might want to sign in the near future. And Ayuk's a great talent. I get that DJ Moore getting paid obviously means Ayuk should too, but why are we comparing the Bears organization to the Niners when the Niners organization has been significantly more competent? That's my guess. It was like this a few years ago when the Browns paid Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed money, and people like Lamar were using that as leverage. It's like, why are we letting the Browns set the standard when they've been so unsuccessful the past few years? Why are we going to let the Bears set the standard? So I really don't think they need Ayuk, and listen, I have the Niners. I think, honestly, all their games on their schedule are winnable. They won't go 16-0, obviously, or 17-0. But, they can beat the Jets, the Vikings. They can beat the Rams twice. I think they'll split that series. They'll beat the Patriots. They'll beat the Seahawks. They have the Chiefs in Week 7, which is interesting. Cowboys is an interesting matchup. The Bucks, Seahawks. Packers will be an interesting matchup. Don't get it twisted. The Bills and the Lions. So, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3... I'm seeing 7 games that I think could be competitive, but I think the Niners are going to win most of them. I think they'll beat the Rams one of the 2 times. They can beat the Chiefs, they can beat the Cowboys, they can beat the Bills, beat the Packers, beat the Lions. What worries me about them is CMC, if you look at his history, whenever he has 300 touches for 2 years straight, he typically gets injured the next year. He's had 300 touches the last 2 years. So there is a component where, and CMC already had a bit of a leg injury this offseason. So it does kind of scare me there. There's a lot of guys on their roster getting up there in age. Debo, Trent Williams. So I think the Niners can absolutely win the Super Bowl, have a phenomenal record this year, but paying Brandon Ayuk is a little scary to me. With that, we shift to another contract negotiation that I've been talking about for far too long. CeeDee Lamb. Micah Parsons expects CeeDee Lamb to have a deal before Week 1. That's his guess. And listen, the Cowboys, I feel like they're in a really crappy situation, but I don't really have empathy because they dug themselves that hole. In all honesty, I want to sympathize, but you did it to yourself, right? You paid Dak a crazy amount of money. Now you're in a spot where if you don't pay Dak, the alternative is much worse than him. Because Dak, I think, is a top 10 to top 12 quarterback in the league. And none of the quarterbacks ahead of him are going to be available in free agency. So, if you let go of Dak, you're settling for a much worse position. Meaning, you have to pay him. And he's going to be asking for north of $60 million a year. And since you have to pay Dak, that means you also have to pay CeeDee Lamb, because as good as Dak is, without CeeDee Lamb, I said the stat on Monday's podcast. When he's throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb, Dak has a 120 passer rating. When he's throwing the ball to any other receiver, it's 89. And that is the difference of a prime Aaron Rodgers and current Daniel Jones. Just for context. I think Daniel Jones was 88 passer rating last year. Aaron Rodgers in his 2 best seasons through 120 had a 120 passer rating. So Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb versus without him is the equivalent of a gap between Rodgers in his prime and Daniel Jones right now. So, like, they have to pay Dak and CeeDee Lamb. They have no choice. And it's going to put them in a hole that they were in with Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott not too long ago. I still think they're a wild card team again this year, but I can't be any higher than that right now. Not with the offseason they've had. Alright, so Tyreek Hill was asked about... Obviously, there's been some... I don't want to say controversy. There's been a heated debate about Tyreek Hill being voted the number one player on the top 100. He basically explained that he does believe he's deserving of the position. His argument was pretty valid, like, yeah, Mahomes is great, but Tyreek Hill has also had back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons. He's been very consistent over the last 5 years. He was the best receiver in football last year, so it can definitely be argued that he is the deserving guy for this honor. I just think, honestly, I really think it's a flawed... Like, voting for the best players is just a flawed thing, I guess. It's like, there's not really a metric or any sort of criteria to compare, like, an O-lineman to a quarterback. Or a defensive lineman to a receiver. It's hard to compare that kind of thing. Unless you, if you want to include value, like, are they the are they the most impactful player on their team? If you take them off the team, how much worse would they be? Because if you take any top 100 player off their team's getting worse. But is it like I used this argument a few years ago when Rodgers was going for back-to-back MVPs. I said if Aaron Rodgers is not on that team, they're not the same team at all. And that's why he was the MVP. My argument was if you take Rodgers off the Packers and take Mahomes off the Chiefs will be better than the Packers. And I still believe I'm right about that. So, I really don't know how they vote on the top 100. I know the players vote, but I have no idea how they decide. I don't know what their deciding factor is. If it were me, I'd look at their value, and Tyreek Hill he has an argument for him and against him. I'll start with the one against him. Patrick Mahomes, since 2021, the last year Tyreek was on the Chiefs, so the last 2 years, over the course of the last 2 years, Patrick Mahomes has the most passing yards, most passing touchdowns, and is fourth in passer rating. So Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league without Tyreek Hill. So that kind of dampens him. And in all honesty, it could be argued that 2022, the year Mahomes was without Tyreek Hill, was his best season. He had over 5,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, 12 picks, which was... and a 105 passer rating. Those were all better stats than the year before. But then again, on the contrary to that, this year was Mahomes' worst year by far. And yeah, Mahomes' worst year is better than most quarterbacks' best year. He had 4,000 yards this year, 27 touchdowns, 14 picks. I think a 92 pass rating. It's a good year, but for Mahomes, it's a great decline. So Mahomes, I think he's shown that he's capable of being the same Mahomes without him. But he's also shown he's a little less efficient, a little less explosive. The offense is less explosive without Tyreek Hill. But then again, on the team he's on right now, you take Tyreek Hill off the Dolphins, they're not a playoff team. Last year, they're not a playoff team if they don't have Tyreek Hill. But yeah, I think if it were up to me, I think CMC is the most versatile player in the NFL. But I think the Niners would be good without him, too. When the Niners made the Super Bowl in 2019, they had Raheem Mostert as their running back, Raheem Mostert's good. He's not CMC. So you take CMC off the team, they're probably still a formidable opponent, the Niners. So it's all tough. It's like a really tough thing to compare. And I think it would be much better, like maybe the top, I think a better ranking would be like top 20 at each position. Would be much more suitable. But I mean, even that would be surprising because Lamar was the highest rated quarterback over Mahomes, which is interesting to me. Because this was apparently voted on before the playoffs this year. And Mahomes was still the reigning MVP and Super Bowl MVP at that point. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can't argue with the players. They're the ones who actually play the game. They probably know more than me, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Alright, I'm going to quickly shut down a rumor, and then I have a few more segments to go. There are rumors since the Olympics ended of Steph and LeBron teaming up. Listen, I enjoyed watching them play together too. This Olympics was very fun to watch. It was great. And it was awesome, in my opinion, because I don't really... I mean, I'm a LeBron fan, so I guess I don't get tired of seeing him being on top of the league. And I've grown quite fond of Steph over the years, too. I mean, I hated him. Obviously, as a Cavs fan, I hated him for a while, but he's really grown on me. LeBron's been my favorite player. So seeing them dominate doesn't bother me, whereas, seeing Tom Brady dominate for years and years did bother me because I wasn't a big fan of his. Until he got to the Buccaneers. When he got to the Buccaneers, he grew on me a lot. It was weird. But, yeah, as I explained on Monday's podcast, like, a lot of people get tired of seeing the same guys dominate, and I do understand that. I suffered the same thing with Tom Brady, who dominated since before I was born. Like, his dominance lasted longer than my lifetime so far. Like, 2 decades. He won his first Super Bowl 5 years before I was born. That's a long time of dominating. LeBron entered the league 3 years before I was born. So, I've witnessed LeBron, KD, and Steph be on top of the league for a while. And, it was fun for me to see, like, everyone back in May, after LeBron and KD both got bounced from the first round, and Steph obviously didn't make the playoffs, everyone wrote them off. They were like, oh, end of an era, end of the big three. And then we get to the Olympics, and the 3 of them are the 3 best players on the team. 3 leading scorers. Steph, LeBron, KD, in that order. They outscored Anthony Edwards, they outscored Devin Booker, outscored Joel Embiid, who rode the bench, and Jason Tatum. They outscored all those guys. So the Olympics was great, but it's a lot different. Also, LeBron and Steph haven't said anything about teaming up together. Like, obviously they're close friends, but, like, if they were to team up, I feel like they would have done it a long time ago. They've been friends for a while. And also, like, the Olympics is not the same as the NBA. Like, they're not going to be... LeBron and Steph aren't going to be surrounded by the best players in the NBA when they go to the Lakers or the Warriors. They're going to be against those guys now. Also, the Olympics... It wasn't. I don't want to say it was built for the older guys, but it was more convenient for them than in the normal NBA. The Olympics is 5 exhibition games and 6 total official games. NBA season is 82 games. Also, the games are shorter. Less playing time. LeBron and Steph averaged about 15 minutes a game in the Olympics. They're both going to be averaging 35 to 40 when they get to the NBA. So the Olympics was more convenient for them. They had a better team, shorter games, less travel. That's all on the contrary to a normal NBA season. So, I mean, I don't know. I would honestly hate to see them team up together because, I feel like I honestly don't think it would be enough to win a championship. As crazy as that sounds, because I'm not sure how they're going to mix as a team either. LeBron works best. Like, when you look at LeBron's number 2 guys, they're not really like Steph. You know, Dwayne Wade was not a ball-dominant guard. He was better defensively, honestly. That was his real strength, was his defense in his career. And he had Chris Bosh, who was a spot-up shooter, pretty solid defender too. And then when he goes to the Cavs, he had Kevin Love, another very solid shooter, pretty good defender in his prime, and then he completely blew up. But yeah, and then there was Kyrie, who I guess is in some ways similar to Steph, but it's not the same guy. And I just don't think they mix well together, and it doesn't seem to make sense for a team to just drag two. Steph's almost 35 and LeBron's turning 40. It doesn't make sense for them to have those be their 2 best guys. Okay, let's shift back to the NFL. So, Caleb Williams had a pretty solid preseason opener. And, well, I took a look at the Bears' schedule this morning, and honestly, I see some winnable games. I can't predict how they will do, but I'll tell you right now, I see about 8 winnable games on the schedule. I think they could beat the Titans. I think they could beat the Colts, the Panthers, the Jags, Cardinals, Washington, Patriots, and the Seahawks. That's 8 winnable games in my opinion. Unfortunately, they also play the Texans, the Rams, Packers twice, Lions twice, the 49ers. They do have a lot of tough teams on there as well, but I see about 8 winnable games. And I'm going to say right now, I think they're finishing 4th. Like, I think ultimately they're not going to go 8-9. That's like their ceiling. But, yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of promise from Caleb Williams, and I think they're going to be in a lot of close games that they lose. You know, similar to like the Vikings and Chargers the last few years, they've had a lot of close games that they lose. So that's what I see the Bears being. All right, let's shift to the Bills. Josh Allen had high praise for rookie Keon Coleman, saying he's a mix of Des Bryant and Michael Thomas. And I honestly think, I don't see a lot of, like, I think the Bills are going to be a solid team. I got them in as a wild card team right now. Josh Allen, that's actually another guy. Like, I was talking about people with value to their teams. Josh Allen, you take Josh Allen off the Bills, they're like a 5 or 6 win team. But, yeah, I mean, I just, Stephon Diggs, after he left, I mean, they just don't have a lot of weapons for Allen to use. I do think they upgraded at running back. Dalton Kincaid looks good. You know, there's stuff to be excited about, but I just don't think they're going to be the same team. Lucky for them, I don't think the Dolphins will be the same team either. But yeah, I mean, I can see Keon Coleman going for like 75 catches, 6 touchdowns. Wouldn't surprise me. He's inheriting a great quarterback, Josh Allen. And, yeah, I think he'll have a pretty good season. Maybe not rookie of the year, but I think we'll get good rookie campaigns from Keon Coleman and Caleb Williams this year. All right, so the Giants are not worried about Malik Neighbors being potentially high maintenance. Now, I have no idea what Malik Neighbors is like. Never met the guy. But I think this team has much bigger things to worry about right now. They're paying Daniel Jones $40 million. They just lost Saquon Barkley. So I think it's fair to say the Giants, Malik Neighbors being high maintenance is not the number one thing. I mean, I don't see a lot of wins on their schedule. Or winnable games, sorry. Washington, Seattle, Washington again, Saints, Panthers. That's 5 games that I see them winning. They got I don't think they beat the Vikings. I don't think they can beat the Browns, the Cowboys, the Bengals, the Eagles, Steelers, Colts, Falcons, Ravens, Bucks. I don't think they can beat those teams. They're in for a rough season. I'll just say that much. So one of your receivers being high maintenance, it's not a great thing, but it's not the worst thing your team's going to be facing right now. All right, let's talk about another NFC East team. Jason Kelce spoke about the Eagles' major collapse last year. They were 10-1 and then fell off a cliff. He just said the cohesion certainly wasn't there like it once was. It's hard for me to criticize Nick Sirianni because he made the playoffs a lot, but I mean, not even a lot. He's made the playoffs every season. But I think him making that Super Bowl was really a lot less of him and a lot more of Shane Steichen, who was shown to be, like last year, he had a very successful rookie campaign as a head coach. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just losing faith in Nick Sirianni every day. I think the Eagles still win their division because I think they are the most talented team, and that's going to carry them. But, I mean, we saw that offense fall off a cliff last year compared to the year before. It's not a coincidence that Shane Steichen left and they plummeted. So, I mean, we'll see what happens in that area. All right. Joe McCarthy is out for the season with a torn meniscus, which is kind of upsetting. He did pretty well in the opener, preseason opener. So, yeah, if they were ever going to shift to McCarthy, it's not going to happen. Clearly. Yeah, I mean, I for one was excited to see what he can do with the Vikings. But, yeah, I mean, Sam Darnold, listen, you can have much worse. I will say that. Sam Darnold's got talent. He's probably going to throw like 15 interceptions. But that's just how he plays. He's got a good arm. So, we'll see them be an entertaining team. It also doesn't hurt to have Justin Jefferson on your side. But, yeah. Joe McCarthy being out is tough news for kind of a tough hit there. Tough break. But the Vikings were never going to do much this season anyway. They're in a division with the Lions and Packers. And quite frankly, they're not a top 17 in the NFC, so they weren't going to make the playoffs. All right, let's speak of another NFC team that's probably not making the playoffs, the Saints. Cameron Jordan spoke about the Saints missing the playoffs last year, simply saying, whatever we've been doing isn't enough. And lucky for them, they're not last in their division. That's probably going to be the Panthers. But, I don't know. It's just, I think really Chris Olave is the best part of that team right now. I think Derek Carr was disappointing last year. Their O-line is weak, and I don't think they have the right head coach right now. I don't think Dennis Allen is a great head coach. And that's going to be the main problem right there. Like, having a quarterback who isn't exactly great and a coach who doesn't seem to be the right fit, that's going to be your first issue as a team. Cameron Jordan is great. That's not going to do anything. If you have one great receiver and one great defensive lineman, that's not going to be enough to get you to the Super Bowl. Let alone even sniff the playoffs. I'm giving them third in the division because I don't think they're better than the Bucs or the Falcons this year. Alright. I have one more team to crap on, and then I'll end this podcast. So Greg Bedard went on the Felger and Maz show and spoke about what he's seeing at the Patriots camp, reporting that the Pats offense is an absolute train wreck in joint practices. And I think a lot of this is because even when Belichick was there with Brady, in like the best years of the Patriots, they were never great at drafting. I would argue they've been the worst team at drafting the last 5 years, the Patriots. Specifically drafting offense, obviously. But, it's... Ever since Brady left, this team has been they've been underachieving significantly. And like I said, Belichick, he's the best coach ever, best defensive coach ever, also. And he was just never able to get the drafting part right. And it's not gonna... Mac Jones was a bust, and they're going with this... they were supposedly going with this Drake May guy, and he's just... He barely got any snaps. I don't think he got any snaps. If you compare him to Bo Nix, the games they had. Bo Nix threw 21 passes. That's because the Broncos are trying to start Bo Nix. My best guess, the reason Drake May didn't get a lot of passes and Joel Milton did, because I don't think Drake May is the man that's getting the job. He threw 3 passes, Bailey Zappi threw 20. They're going to start Bailey Zappi this year. That's what the first preseason game told me. That Bo Nix is being set up to be a starter in Denver, and the same is not happening for Drake May. Which further proves... It's further proof to me that I'm pretty confident that Pats are going to be the worst team in football this year. I see them being a 3 or 4 win team. They're one of, I think, 5 teams that are definitely finishing last in their division. The Raiders are finishing last. Panthers, Pats, Titans, and... there's 4 teams that are certainly coming in last. Panthers, Patriots, Raiders, and Titans. I think Seattle's also going to finish last, but I'm not entirely certain that they're worse than the Cardinals. But yeah. That's it for today. About a 35-minute podcast. I will be back here tomorrow. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan. Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose Dylan. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.